Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar on how UX drove a 250% surge in Levno's app engagement. My name is Young Jay, and I'm the head of marketing here at Nodero. And we have the amazing Lucas, our senior UX designer that led the UX project for Levno. And in this webinar, we're going to go behind the scenes of a UX story that delivered a 250% increase in Levno's app engagement. But let's start with some quick context for everyone. So Levno operates in the agri-tech space, and their app gives farmers real-time insights powered by smart sensors, like tracking milk, fuel, and water usage through a dashboard and alerts. And before I ask Lucas to walk us through on exactly what happened, but let me start with a quote from Michael Davis, the CTO at Levno. Quote, this result was kind of a proof of our whole value proposition to make things easier at the most stressful times of the year. For the last 4 years, we've consistently had feedback from Fonterra, our largest customer, saying you guys are blowing the competition away in terms of the way your app works and looks. How amazing is that? So I'll hand over to Lucas. So Lucas, walk me through how your UX project helped Levno achieve this amazing result.
Sure thing, Yingjae. So it's quite interesting. To start with, the project was initially supposed to be quite a small exercise. I was brought on by the head of the development team at the time, and he was quite concerned about more minute details about the user experience, things like the date formatting, what makes sense to users, quite specific details almost. And then very, very quickly, the conversation instead became about, well, hang on, we don't actually, that's not the biggest problem facing us. The biggest problem facing us is how are we going to make 10 more apps just like this one? So initially we started just focused on milk, the milk dashboard that went out to farmers via their mobile app. And the question quickly became, how do we format the dates, to how do we build 10 more apps like milk? And so the first thing was obvious. We needed to revise their navigation, their primary navigation, their menus. They would not really, there was no way to transfer from milk to a different app, say for fuel tanks as opposed to milk vats. And within the actual features themselves, there was no way to include additional things like more settings, different, more features in the app. So at every level of navigation, be it across farms, across apps, and within the app across features, we needed to revise the navigation so that it could accommodate scale at every level. So the initial parts of the project were actually quite focused on navigation, and very specifically because there's 4 levels of navigation. You can navigate across apps, you can navigate across farms, you can navigate across features within the app, and you can navigate across dashboards. So dashboards being one milk vat versus another milk vat. There's 4 levels of navigation, and so we worked really, really hard to make sure that wasn't taking up too much screen real estate for a start, but also that it was adequately communicated to users that they could transverse all these different ways, and that it made sense and they were able to do so. So the initial part of the project was enabling scale at all those different levels of navigation. So, and that was sort of a philosophy we took to just about everything that we did. What if we made 50% more? We're making a dashboard. What if it was 50% bigger? We're making a list of apps. What if it was 50% longer? Just to make sure that if Levno needed to scale, and quite frequently they did, that the app could accommodate it without any additional extra work to slow the pipeline. So that was our first sort of cab off the rank. And then from there, we started working on the other pieces of the app, so the features. So how did the dashboard tiles look? How did alerts look? How did notifications look? How do users set up alerts and notifications, and trying to standardize some of those processes. So when we went from, once we had nailed milk and we felt like that was in a really good spot, we had the beginnings of a design system effectively. So we had a good core set of dashboard tiles that accommodated a range of different types of data. We had a good set of form input components, so we could rapidly build out a new type of form for setting up an alert or configuring the dashboard as needed. Our navigation was set in stone, so we knew where new features would go, and we knew how to get around the app, no matter how big that it got. And so we had the beginnings of a design system. And so when we went to transfer that to their fuel app, which they wanted to scale up and include also, it was obvious where to put it. It was obvious how to get from milk to fuel and back again. And it was obvious how to set up the dashboard because we already had the tiles from milk. And it was a very sort of systematized, layered approach so that they could quickly build up a new app. And again, for water and again for effluent, as many apps as they needed, building blocks were there. And by having me, I guess, start the process, or every time I needed something new, I would have a good crack at it first as the designer. It helped maintain consistency as they built upwards so that things didn't get further and further away from the core usability principles, because you can have two different apps which are functionally usable in and of themselves, but if users are bouncing between them and they don't work the same, then the mental model, the consistency starts to fall apart. So you do actually want them to feel similar and feel cohesive and as though they're under one brand, right? And so the design system was sort of a key component as we built it up and as we built it out to maintaining that consistency and maintaining that experience as they scaled.
Nice. And were there any like challenges that you faced while creating this design and kind of implementing it? Were there any challenges that you faced, or?
I mean, there's always challenges when you implement a new design. Some of the obvious ones with the design system in particular is trying to decide when to reuse a component you've used before because it enables the developers to quite quickly spin something up, right? That's component reuse, as opposed to designing something new. So when do you customize versus when do you use existing mental models? There's a number of ways you can sort of approach that. Sometimes it came down to user testing, where the CPO, Michael Davis, at the time, might take some of my mockups to users and he would work it through that way. Sometimes experience from their sales or support teams would feed into how we might tackle something. And sometimes we just sort of felt our way through it as we went. Different projects have a different level of appetite for upfront test, like user testing and that sort of thing. With Levno, everything moved really fast. They were scaling fast and they were growing fast. So there was much more of an attitude towards build it, get it out the door, and then we test live. So we usually tackled, we had our best guess, feeding in from lots of experienced people on the team, and we would sort of decide that way. So that's sort of one challenge that comes up. Another one which was quite interesting, especially interesting for me as a designer, was understanding, I guess, the nuance of some of the data. They have such a wealth of data at Levno. The amount of information they collect is kind of insane. And the amount of value they can deliver back in number form to their customers is truly remarkable. And I'm a numbers guy. I like dashboards. I like data. I like statistics. I really do. I'm kind of a nerd that way. So it was interesting for me to learn that, particularly with fuel, telling people how much fuel in their fuel tank is a common use case. It's one of the primary use cases of it. Your tank is half full. Your tank is, For me, there's a number of different ways you can do that. And for me, I'd want to know how many liters are in my fuel tank.
Yeah.
So if it was a 500-liter fuel tank, I want to know that there's 318 liters in there. The other way you could do that is by a percentage. You could say, there's 62% in the tank. So you kind of get an idea. You look at it, 62%, cool. I'm missing 40. That's about how much I've got to go. Farmers didn't particularly like that. It was almost too much information. That actually wasn't the question they wanted to know. The question they want to know is roughly, like at a glance, roughly, where am I at? Am I going to last the day? Am I going to last the week? The number didn't actually matter. So we swapped it for a graphic, which was effectively, it's a fuel gauge, and it would just have a needle on the fuel gauge that would point to roughly where it was.
Yeah.
It was sort of broken up into 4 quarters so they could easily tell mostly full, mostly empty. That's all they wanted to know.
That's what they wanted.
The number, the specificity was not required and actually a hindrance to the task, which I
Wow.
found quite interesting. So there's lots of things like that you sort of come across, those minute details as you
Definitely.
build out.
Definitely. I mean, it's so important to know what what the user actually wants. You can't just assume, and you just gotta keep on, doing that research and just talk to them and actually find out what exactly do you want,
That's
That's
right.
so important. Well, that's amazing, Lucas. And I guess for this for the viewers that are whether they're tech leaders or UX designers, what if they want to build an app at scale? What would you say the biggest UX takeaways are for the teams that want to build apps at scale, just like Levno? What would you say?
I think you do need to start with a core set of components, that design system like we talked about, something you can refer back to, something that helps govern the consistency across the design and across the components. And there's a lot of levels you can sort of implement that at. So you can say a common one is fonts and typography, right? You want to set style of headings and body copy so that every time there's a page title, it's the same. Because if it's not the same, you can sort of see the design start to get all over the shop and starts to lose brand cohesion and things like that. That's an obvious level to apply it at. The next ones are things like a common set of buttons, a common set of icons, a common set of form inputs like checkboxes and text inputs and that sort of thing. But then you start to group them into larger components. So every time we have a set of filters on a list of data or on a table, for example, this is how we group them. This is how we lay it out. This is how it responds to different screen sizes. You might have templates. So this is what a dashboard tile in a dashboard page looks like. This is what the navigation template is like. This is what the form template looks like. And then that helps the designer spin up designs quickly. It helps you test them quickly. It helps the developers spin up new features quickly because they're reusing code, they're reusing components. It reduces the testing burden and all that kind of thing. So I think if you actually want to be building fast, you've got to start. You need to bake that consistency in from the start. But also there's other tangible benefits to having a design mocked up sort of before build happens. There's actually probably more than people realize. And I think about the time, sort of shortly after we finished that navigation piece of the Levno project, and we started building things at scale, and the mock-up got quite large. I think by the end of it, I had about 250 unique mobile screens that I'd mocked up. But one of the easiest to recognize benefits of doing that is you have something you can look at. It's something tangible. You can actually play with it. It was semi-interactive. You can look at it. You can post it on the screen in the meeting room. They would walk it around their office, show marketing, show sales, show support.
Yep.
And it makes having a conversation and getting buy-in and facilitating the understanding of what we're trying to do much, much faster, much, much easier. If people are sitting around a table, you're having a conversation about how are we going to solve this problem? Can we do it this way? Can we do it that way? It's sort of intangible. It's up in the air, and you don't actually know that what you said is what they understood, and vice versa. If you're all looking at the same thing, the conversation is radically different and significantly simpler.
Absolutely.
So I think one of the benefits Levno got from having such a detailed sort of mock-up that we put together over several years was the ability to take those screens and have different conversations with different people, including the users. Some of them ended up on marketing material or sales material as well.
Oh, yeah.
And it just really facilitates all kinds of conversations.
Yeah, amazing. Well, that's everything that we've prepared for this webinar. Was there anything else you wanted to cover, Lucas? Or
well, I can talk a bit more about it. I mean, over time, as we sort of built up at scale, and we started ticking off those different apps, those big ticket items that we had built at scale using our design system. You do sort of get down to the more nitty-gritty details over time. So it stops being about how do we quickly spin up an entirely new app, and it starts being about how do we quickly add a new feature. But it's fundamentally the same process. There was a design mock-up produced, facilitated those good conversations. It reused as many components as we could, so it made it simple for the dev team to spin them up and get them out into test. And then you sort of work backwards almost. So you get it
Yeah.
out the door, you get it testing, and then you get live data, live user testing
Yep.
basically, coming back in, rich insights, and then you start to tinker with those smaller details.
Definitely.
And then sort of over time, other things that contributed to their growth and their uptick in page views were, I guess, the different pillars, I guess, that you would include in an app. So to start with, it was about, first of all, getting all those feature sets out there and in the hands of users. And then there were other sort of strategic ways we sort of approached that. So we did work on a new sign-up process. So from the login screen, signing up, payment, and all that. This was quite important. It enabled, first of all, it enabled onboarding easier, so users could actually get started quicker with a bit less friction. It was good for the business too, because they had more control over their payment methods and things like that. They could actually offer the options that they wanted. And it reduced the burden on the sales team. If there's less friction for the users, they're not calling up as much to ask for help. And some of the other things that would have really contributed to that were what we call self-help resources. So having a support team is excellent. Having a website with documentation and tutorials and things is excellent. The next level down is to bring in things like inline help. So things like tooltips and ways for users to self-serve their own help. And that means that when they need help in the moment, they click on the tooltip or they know where to go. If there were links to the website or links in the app to help solve their own problems, that did reduce the support burden on the teams there. And it did actually result in a higher what would you say, adoption of new features, particularly if they were sort of niche and confusing, which in the farm world often they were niche. Often. So there's different things like that that are part of the system that makes up an app. It's not just the features, it's how do you communicate them to the users? How do the users solve their own problems? Do they know where to go? And another piece we sort of worked on quite a lot was how were customers who were just using the milk portion of the app learn about fuel or find out about fuel? Where do they go to have more information? How do they quickly get set up on fuel if that's what they want? So we put a lot of work into some of the resources around that, some of the interface, things like FAQs, things like videos and screenshots. There was almost like there basically was a free trial of it, a free demo that people could sort of get in there and start tinkering. And so it's all these little things we served up over time that enable users, break down the friction, and you just build out and make sure everything's working together and consistent, and they're grounded in that design system. And everything works together, and
how good.
And it just contributes to that growth.
Definitely. Well, Lucas, thank you so much for all your practical and kind of valuable insights. And thank you guys for watching the webinar today. Well, if you guys need help with UX design, reach out to us at Nodero. We would love to help. And we also actually build custom software applications and support delivery with with project management, business analysis, and testing. So if you need help with those things, let us know as well. But other than that, until next time, take care and thanks again for watching. And thanks, Lucas. Cheers, mate.
Thanks, Jay.